Hey AfterBuzzers, welcome back to the Good Doctor After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. Tonight we are talking Season 2, Episode 6, To Ply or Not to Ply. Tonight's episode answers one very important question. Which way does the toilet paper roll go? We'll be talking about this as well as Morgan's competitive nature, and Shaun and Leah are roommates now, so we're going to see how that goes. Stay tuned.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome back, Good Doctor fans. Last week, our episode was called Carrot, so we opened with the song Carrot. This week, there's a lot of toilet paper talk, so you know what? We're going to open with the Charmin commercial song because it's catchy and why not? Again, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Veronica Valencia. Unfortunately, I am by myself tonight. Both Carlina and Tequila could not make it, but don't worry, they will be back next week. Coming up later in the show, we're going to be talking all about Morgan's choices and her competitive nature, as well as Shaun and Leah being roommates, as well. Should Claire say sorry to Melendez? Should they just make up and get it over with? Also, we have our special segments, Shaun Says, where I get to say some of our favorite Shaun quotes. So please, in the live chat, if you have any of your favorite quotes, keep them coming. As well as, I did a poll on Twitter today to see which way should the toilet paper roll go, and I have those results coming up for you later on in the show. But before we get into any of that, I just want to give some of my general thoughts on tonight's episode. So far, I really loved tonight's episode. What I really appreciated about it was we finally got to get some very important backstory to some of our more mysterious characters on the show. So obviously, Dr. Park. Last episode, we got to learn a little bit about his past and his relationships. We know he's divorced. This episode, we learned that he also has a child. So we're starting to uncover more about Dr. Park, which I think is very interesting because we don't know much about him. Same thing with Morgan. Since she has been introduced on the show, all that we know about her really is that she is kind of rude, is very competitive, likes to outshine all of her fellow coworkers. But this episode, we got to see that she had a passion growing up, and we get to see her be a little bit more emotional because she can relate to the patient that she was working on. But now let's go into Shaun and Leah as roommates. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Billie Jean 124 in the chat. I can't believe Leah was expecting Shaun to change just because they're roommates now. Ooh, I agree. I thought that this was going to be a train wreck the moment the episode opened and Leah left the toothbrush on the bathroom sink. You could just tell that they have differences, but this could be said about anyone with roommates. You always have your different ways of living, and it's always about compromise. I do have to say, I know I've been giving Leah a lot of slack in the last couple episodes, just in the way her and Shaun's relationship since she came back has been so rocky. But I have to give it to her this episode because I genuinely respected and appreciated that she tried to work it out with Shaun. She didn't just up and leave like she did the first time. She didn't say she wanted to move out. She genuinely wanted to find a compromise to all of Shaun's kind of obsessive quirks, such as, the cups and the way that the toilet paper goes and the stuff that he does with the apples. I just really appreciated that Leah wanted to try and help and find a compromise with this. And I really respected her for that, especially because I know I have been giving her quite some grief. And I found it kind of funny. I found it wise that she would go to Glassman, to someone who has known him for so long, but also how does she know where Glassman lives? She just shows up out of nowhere, but I thought it was very smart for her to go and confide in someone and try and get more help, so that way she just doesn't up and leave Shaun again, because that would be terrible, and I would not be too happy, as I have not been necessarily her biggest fan for the past couple episodes, as we know. But like I said, I really respect and appreciate that Leah had the mature conversation, and it seems like her and Shaun are going to work it out, which I'm very excited for. I know last week both Carlene and I were talking about how this will be very important for Shaun because he needs to learn how to live with people and kind of learn that he can't always have it his way, work on his communication skills. And I feel like this might be a train wreck in some instances, them living together. But I think in the end, it's going to be very important for the both of them. Now let's get into Shaun, Morgan, and Melendez in their case. So their case, they are dealing with a patient who comes in and eventually is diagnosed with flesh-eating bacteria. I don't know, again, you guys can tune in the chat, but this one was very scary. Just the idea of it. You go in thinking, oh, there's a slight infection in your finger because you got a bad manicure, and it turns out you actually have a very life-threatening disease. It's very scary how you can go into the doctor for one thing and then they can diagnose you and have an entirely different thing. What I enjoyed a lot about this scenario, and even something that I've noticed, I'm sure we've talked about on the show, is that a lot of these cases, these patient cases that we see, often help our characters. And it's through this patient that we see more Morgan, as I had mentioned, that was very exciting. Obviously, Morgan, in the beginning, she got too emotionally involved. And I think that was very, very dangerous, because Morgan is usually the type to be very, I don't want to use the term just professional, but professional. She is able to diagnose it and do her job as a doctor, trying to keep her emotions out of it. But she was able to relate to this patient so much because they shared a similar passion, in the sense that they had to really train for it and work for something their entire life to eventually just get it taken away, whether in Morgan's case it was going to school, or in her patient Jazz's case it was getting her arm amputated. I thought Morgan's stubbornness obviously got in the way. She didn't want Shaun to, I guess you could say, outdo her in the sense, because she was like, you can't make patients afraid or anything like that. And it was a very good point. I have made this comment before. Shaun needs to work on his sensitivity when delivering very scary news to patients. He can't just go out and say, oh, you have flesh-eating bacteria. He needs to deliver it a little bit more sensitively and be a better communicator in that sense. So I felt Morgan made a very honest point to Shaun by saying you can't constantly scare patients like this, but I do think she should have maybe listened to more what he had to say. But again, this probably goes back to her competitive nature. She didn't want Shaun to outdo her maybe in that moment, but obviously as it turned out, from what she says, she saw the emotion behind it. She wanted to save the dream, not necessarily just diagnosing the symptoms, which Shaun did. And then in her talks with Melendez, obviously, in some cases, putting the emotion in could be the right choice. In other cases, only diagnosing the symptoms could be the better outcome. It's such a case-by-case basis. But this was such an important episode for Morgan because, as I had mentioned, along with Dr. Park, Morgan, we never got to see much of her. We just kind of know that she's very competitive. She likes to outshine everyone. She kind of throws some of her colleagues under the bus, especially Claire. She wants to be the top of her class and everything. And this episode, we got to see her be emotional. We got to see her be vulnerable. And I thought it was a great moment to finally see more of Morgan in this capacity. And actually, Billie Jean Girl in 24 in the chat is saying Morgan finally showed emotions. She's actually human. Yes, she is. And again, it was so important that we got to see more of her character this way. And then again, Billie Jean Girl 24 in the chat saying, in regards to probably going to the doctor and having one thing turn out to be another thing, that happened to me when I was a kid. I went to the hospital for a checkup and ended up getting checked into a room and staying there for a couple of weeks. Again, some of these cases are very scary. So that case just alone, that was very scary because she went in for something so simple. And I do have to admit that with Morgan, it was disappointing, and I'm sure this is going to, I don't even want to say a learning experience. So this is going to be something that is going to haunt her for a very long time, because she had the option to maybe just remove some of the finger, but because the bacteria was so far along, they had to end up amputating her arm, which is much, much worse. And that's going to obviously live with her because she was going to see it as her fault. But I think one of the greatest lessons to come out of this is that Melendez tells her the story, obviously, of how you need to stop competing with others and just work at being the best surgeon. And obviously, Dr. Lim was someone that he was very competitive with. And I hope that, and I genuinely think that Morgan will take this lesson to heart and try to stop being so competitive and trying to work better with her colleagues. Maybe she'll be less competitive with herself. Maybe she'll still be slightly competitive with her colleagues. But I think she's going to try and look at the situations a lot better, which I'm very excited to see in Morgan's character. I'm hoping that we get to see more of her vulnerability. I'm hoping we get to learn more of her backstory. And I'm hoping we get to see more interactions with her and everyone else. Also, speaking of which, I know last week Carlene and I were talking about how with Melendez kicking Claire off of his team, that maybe there would have to be some kind of switch up. So obviously this week we saw Shaun and Morgan on Melendez's team and Dr. Park and Claire on Dr. Lim's team. And I just thought that was fun because that was something that we had predicted and it was something that ended up true, a little switcheroo for this episode, which was very fun to see because it's just more dynamics and interacting with the different teams and how they work together, especially because all of the residents have their different ways of approaching patient care. Morgan and Shaun definitely with the diagnosis and the symptoms, whereas Claire's a little bit more emotionally invested. Speaking of Claire, we can talk about her case along with Lim and Park. But before we go into any of that, AfterBuzz has so much content that we want to let you know about it. So, hey AfterBuzzers, our network produces after shows for nearly all of your favorite TV shows. From dramas, reality TV, sci-fi, and more, there is no network that works harder to serve television fans. But we need your help. We're asking that you please subscribe to one or more of our YouTube channels. By subscribing to our channel, YouTube will suggest content that's tailor-made, and you'll help AfterBuzz continue to grow. And if you're worried about pesky notifications, don't be, because they're optional, so you can just completely turn those off. So hit that subscribe button now for this channel and check out our other AfterBuzz YouTube channels as well. Let us know you did so in the comments and I'll thank you on air. I love getting shout outs in our live chat and our comments on iTunes. So please let us know you did that. I would love to get more shout outs. For now, thanks for being the best fans and for helping us remain the ESPN of TV talk. Clearly, we love talking to you. Clearly, I love talking to you. I am here by myself talking all about The Good Doctor because you want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. It was such an important episode. So please subscribe and help us keep growing because it's what allows us to keep doing this and talking about stuff that we love. So now let's talk about Claire, Lim, and Park. First of all, I just want to say, wow, this episode, I started to respect and enjoy characters that I have been previously giving that I wasn't necessarily warming up to, such as Leah and Morgan. I was giving them a little bit of a hard time. I wasn't necessarily enjoying them. This episode, they really brought a different side to their character that really made me enjoy them, and I'm enjoying to see that growth and see if it continues on. Claire, on the other hand, was a character who I really enjoyed from the beginning because I always enjoyed how she worked with others. I always loved how she interacted and communicated with Shaun, and I always thought that she had a great and interesting backstory. Claire has been disappointing me the last couple episodes. Last episode, did she end up being right with her patient? Yes, but there's still a fine line, and you should not go above your superior and go around them to try and get a result that you want. That's just personally what I believe. Let me know in the comments if you think that Claire should have respected Melendez more and not go behind his back. This episode, she bothered me though, because Park is just saying, just go apologize and it'll all be over. And I think, frankly, as a viewer, she should just go apologize, and that way we can be over this feud and we can kind of get back to the main things at hand. But she is so proud. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I personally think she did something wrong. And I think it would be easier if she just followed Park's advice and apologized to Melendez. Let's see, going to our chat right here. Yeah, so I personally think she should have just apologized. It would have been so better. And then towards the end of the episode, when she is in the elevator with both Melendez and Lim, Melendez obviously has kind of have this idea of, maybe I was wrong. But I don't know about you guys. Again, let us know in the comments. And if you're watching live, let me know in the live chat what you thought. I personally thought Claire was a little cocky. Maybe that's just how I read it. Maybe I read it weird, but I thought she was in there kind of cocky because she got a win that day with her case, and she got a win with Melendez, even though she had to be very shady to get it. I just hope that she doesn't have this very cocky attitude, because that would just bring her down for me. So again, I've been enjoying seeing characters that I haven't necessarily been enjoying the last couple episodes rise above, and characters who were risen above and I've enjoyed, I'm starting to become very disappointed with, i.e. Claire. And now let's go into her patient. So her patient is Riley, who gets a lot of nosebleeds. I thought that this whole patient was interesting just because she has the divorced parents and everyone kind of thinks that she's a liar. And one of the great things about Claire is that she has emotional intelligence. She can be able to relate to a patient and see if through that connection they can get better care. In some cases, I thought that maybe Claire was too emotional and it let her deter her judgment and it wasn't right, maybe overall, for the patient. In this case, it obviously really worked because she was able to relate to the patient and able to get to the bottom of it, realizing middle school's terrible. She has divorced parents who always argue. It's tough for her and she doesn't want to be in that situation. And again, even the line with Dr. Park saying you're an oversharer because I know so much about you and I like to keep my life private. I think Claire sometimes does overshare and does put her emotions a little too forward in some situations. But I think in this one, obviously, like I said, I think it was good. Gloria Hernan in the chat says Claire is very empathetic, and Billie Jean Girl 24 in the chat is saying Claire shouldn't have gone behind someone's back because she could have ended up being wrong. She got lucky. Yes, that is such a good point. She got lucky. You can even say that about Shaun, or even any of our residents. There are some cases where they just get lucky, but that's not going to be the case. And I'm waiting for that episode, and I don't necessarily want it to be like, this is how you need to learn your lesson by being completely wrong, because that would be something very traumatic because a patient would be involved. But she got lucky. She was very lucky that it all turned out well. I still think it was wrong, and I still think she should just apologize and get it over with. Billie Jean agrees, saying, yeah, Claire is being annoying and she should apologize. Thank you. I'm very happy to know that I am not alone in this fight. Again, keep your comments coming because I really enjoy talking to you guys. All right. And then we basically find out that the reason for Riley's suffering is because she swallowed or sniffed a Lego, which was I don't know. I thought it was pretty nice, just because it didn't turn out to be something as terrible as flesh-eating bacteria. So I am happy that Claire got the win. I don't want her to get a cocky attitude about it, and I want her to apologize to Melendez. And she's a good resident, but I think there are just certain cases where she needs to, work better with her colleagues and especially her supervisors. All right. Now I want to talk about Dr. Glassman. But before I go and talk about Dr. Glassman, I just want to remind everyone out there watching about iTunes. So, of course, you can watch on iTunes. That's what we're doing right here. But you can also take us with you on the go and listen to us on iTunes. Please go there, rate, review, and subscribe. And please leave us some comments. I love reading the comments. I would love to give more shout outs on air. Again, just like subscribing to our channels by downloading our podcast on iTunes. It's what helps us keep going and talking about great shows with you guys. So please watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on iTunes. It's very much appreciated. So thank you all so much. So Dr. Glassman, we've been talking about this, how I just basically think Dr. Glassman is too proud of a man. He was a very top-notch surgeon, and he doesn't like to feel like he's at the bottom of the barrel and in this very vulnerable position. He seems to be doing well, and he seems to have an up-and-coming relationship with Debbie. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I understand maybe why he doesn't want to get in a relationship with Debbie. Maybe it's because it's just too soon and he wants to focus on his health. I personally think it goes back to the vulnerable stage. He doesn't want someone to see him as super vulnerable like the doctors. He probably will think Debbie will end up being more of his caretaker as opposed to his girlfriend. And that's very disappointing to me because I don't want Glassman to just end up alone because he's too proud. I would rather him be happy with Debbie and kind of work with her and figure out how to create a nice balance between being taken care of, because we all know that's what's going to happen, obviously, because he got lightheaded and fainted. But I would like to see if there's a balance between taking care of him and having a relationship, because I feel like if he just continues to alienate everybody, he's just going to end up alone. And that's not going to be good for his recovery. And it's probably just not going to be good for his character moving forward. He obviously has Shaun, or Shaun wants to be there for him, but I think Shaun realized in the last episode maybe he's not who Glassman needs because he comes off too much of a doctor. So I can see Shaun's taking some step back. And so right now all he really has is Debbie and maybe his nurse that helps him out. But she doesn't count. I don't count her. Long story short, I hope that he does not alienate Debbie. I think he really needs someone to help him through these hard times in his recovery right now. Billie Jean Girl 24 in the chat says, I agree, Glassman doesn't want Debbie to see him weak. Gloria Hernan in the chat is saying he didn't take his meds. Did you guys notice? I believe there was a comment, the nurse or someone had made a comment that he wasn't taking his meds. I could also be very wrong, but I thought that I heard that. And then Gloria is also saying, I love Dr. Glassman. I felt so bad for him when he got dizzy. Poor thing. He could have got some. Yes, things were about to get hot and heavy with Debbie, and then the side effect kicked in, which, thank goodness, that's all it was just him getting dizzy and lightheaded. I, for a split second, got very nervous thinking that maybe it would have been a more severe side effect to his operation and maybe he would have ended up back in the hospital. Again, as both Tequila and Carlina and I have all talked about, we thought that his surgery would be stretched out a little bit more over these couple episodes, but it's almost kind of seemed to wrap up. Obviously, he's still healing from it all, but as far as the actual operation goes, it kind of all wrapped up very quickly. So I wouldn't have been surprised if his fainting spell had turned out to be something more serious that put him back in the hospital and him, again, struggling with that. Let me know if that's what you thought too, or if that was your initial reaction, or if you thought it was very much just him fainting. Because I definitely thought that it would have been something much, much more severe. So again, let us know all of your comments. Let us know what you thought about this episode. Let me know what you thought about Glassman, about Morgan and Park's character development. Is Claire annoying you like she's kind of annoying me? Are you getting a little bit happier with Leah and Shaun's relationship, that it's becoming more mature and not so back and forth and wishy-washy like it was in the beginning? Let me know what you think about all of this. I would love to talk with you and read some more. But for now, let's go into our special segment, Shaun Says. So we started this last week because Shaun is very funny and he has some great one-liners. These ones obviously all kind of revolve around toilet paper, because that was one of the big debates with him and Leah, was which way does the toilet paper go, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. But here are some of our really fun Shaun quotes. Do you hang your toilet paper going over or under? They were installed by professionals, when he was taking a picture of the toilet paper to prove a point, just in a public restroom. You have to hang the toilet paper on the dispenser the right way. The paper goes over on the top, not underhanging against the wall. And Angel Fluff plus 2-ply unscented ultra wide extra soft, which is a very specific type of toilet paper. He must have the nicest tushy ever, because he is getting some very nice toilet paper. He ain't cheap. He ain't getting none of that 1-ply. It is 2-ply, unscented, extra wide, and extra soft. His tushy is happy. So for Shaun's tushy, very tushy happy. Gloria in the chat is saying, I think Leah and Shaun are adorable. They'll work it out. And he is right about the toilet paper. It's good to know that we have more people that, right about the toilet paper and how it goes. Yes, I completely agree. In terms, also, let us know in the chat if you still ship Leah and Shaun. I know some of you were thinking about that. I'm still very much on the fence. Maybe this new mature approach to their relationship and being roommates will make me change my mind. I still don't think that they would be the best romantically, but as roommates, I think they can learn a lot from each other. That is currently where I stand with that. All right, so now, this episode obviously talked a lot about toilet paper and a lot of debate. Leah clearly is someone who puts the toilet paper under. Shaun is someone who puts the toilet paper over. So I conducted a poll on Twitter asking all of our Good Doctor fans, and honestly anyone who just wanted to participate, which way it goes. And Tony, the man up in the booth, can I please get a drum roll for these very, very impressive results? All right, guys. With 100% of the vote, the toilet paper clearly goes over the top. Ta-da! There was absolutely no question. There is no debate. If you put the toilet paper on bottom, I don't trust you. There's something very wrong. Tony up in the booth, which way do you put the toilet paper on the roll?
Every time it goes over. I don't like pulling toilet paper. I like smacking the toilet paper so it rolls.
You smack it!
I smack it, yeah, I'm a smacker.
It's too much work to try and get it from underneath. It tears too quickly.
I hate when it tears on me.
It does.
I don't like that.
When it's down over the top, you get to like choose your length very nicely. When it's on the bottom, it tears too quickly. It's just not fun. So do us all a favor. If you are someone who puts your toilet paper on bottom, you need to change that right now. You cannot be trusted. You need to put it on over the top because then everyone will be happy. Honestly, it just makes me so anxious whenever I see toilet paper on the wrong way, and I instantly want to change it because that's just how the way it is. And just some last minute comments. Billie Jean Girl 24 in regards to Shaun taking pictures about the professionals. Shaun didn't care that he was in the women's bathroom, neither did Claire, since she didn't kick him out of there. True, I didn't even think of that. And again, I'm over shipping Shaun and Leah. They should just be friends. Yes, currently I agree. Again, maybe that'll change in the new mature approach to their relationship, but who knows? Right now, I am more than content with them being friends. All right, guys. That is all the time that I have today. That's all I really have to say about this episode as well. Thank you again so much for tuning in. I know it was just me today, but I appreciate it so much, you joining in on the live chat. And if you're watching this later, I would much appreciate if you put some comments down below so that way we can go back to them and talk about it again next week. Thank you so much for joining. Tequila and Carlina will be back next week. You can actually find Tequila on social media at Tequila I am, Carlina at Cook with Carlina, and you can find me on Veronica Valencia on Twitter and Instagram at it's me Veronica_V. Thank you again so much for tuning in. We will be a full panel next week, and it was just great getting to talk this episode with you, even though it was just me. So stick around, and we'll see you all next week. Bye, guys.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.